Imagine standing beside a fire 50,000 years ago, just as the last sunlight disappears behind the trees. There is no house, no phone, no screen, and no safe door waiting behind you. There is only your small group, the backs breathing darkness, and smoke twisting straight into your face. At first, that smoke is just annoying, bitter, hot, and impossible to escape around the fire. But one night, something strange happens when certain leaves fall into the flames and begin burning. The smell changes, the air feels different, and the people around the fire become unusually quiet. Someone coughs, someone laughs, and someone notices that the mind feels softer than before. That moment may have been one of the strangest discoveries in the entire human story. Not the invention of cigarettes, not tobacco companies, and not the modern habit we know today. This is about the first time ancient humans realized smoke could change the way they felt. And once humans noticed that the fire was no longer only a tool for survival, it became a doorway into medicine, ritual, bonding, danger, and one of humanity's oldest mysteries. Before anyone could smoke anything, humans first had to master the most powerful force they had ever touched. Fire was warmth, protection, cooking, light, and sometimes the thin line between life and death. Long before Homo sapiens ruled the earth, earlier humans were already sitting close to controlled. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found evidence of fire use around 1 million years ago. There were burned plant remains and charred bones, suggesting fire was used deliberately inside the cave. Those fires belonged not to modern people, but to earlier humans such as Homo erectus. They had heavier brows, different bodies, and smaller brains. But they understood something essential. When the sun died, fire could keep the night from swallowing the entire group. Around those flames, they cooked meat, warmed their hands, watched shadows, and breathed smoke every evening. For hundreds of thousands of years, smoke entered human lungs not as choice, but as environment. There was no clean air, button, no chimney, and no way to completely avoid the haze. Every campfire meant warmth and safety, but it also meant ash, coughing, tears, and burning eyes. Still, humans stayed near fire because the dangers outside were worse than the smoke inside. But not all smoke was the same, and ancient people would have noticed that very quickly. Dry wood smelled one way, green branches another, and certain plants created smoke that felt different. Some plants released strong aromas, strange oils, bitter compounds, and chemicals that affected the nervous system. A burning leaf could make people calm, dizzy, sleepy, alert, or strangely connected to the group. At first, nobody understood chemistry, receptors, or the invisible compounds rising from the flames. They only understood experience. This plant makes breathing difficult. That plant makes the mind feel different. That difference was enough, because prehistoric knowledge was built from repeated observation, not written explanation. If one smoky branch made everyone cough painfully, the group remembered and avoided it next time. If another plant made people relaxed during a terrifying tonight, that memory also stayed with them. This is where the origin of smoking may truly begin, not with invention, but with accident. A tired hunter sits too close to smoke from the wrong bush and suddenly feels less afraid. A grieving family burns herbs near a body and notices the air changes the whole mood. A healer throws leaves into the fire and sees a sick person breathe more easily. Small discoveries like these could become habits, then customs, then rituals passed through generations. Nobody needed a laboratory to understand that some smoke did something unusual to the human body. They only needed memory, curiosity, and enough nights around fire to test the world slowly. Modern scientists know that. Many plants release active compounds when burned or heated near flames. Some contain alkaloids, some contain terpenes, and some interact directly with the human nervous system. Plants like cannabis, wild tobacco, relatives, and other powerful herbs grew naturally across ancient landscapes. Early humans moving through forests, grasslands, and valleys would have encountered these plants again and again. This does not mean every ancient campfire was a drug ritual, or that everyone used smoke deliberately. It means accidental exposure was almost unavoidable once fire and wild plants shared the same human camp. The human brain already contains systems that respond to certain plant compounds, including cannabinoids and nicotine. Those systems did not evolve for those plants, but the plants could still unlock noticeable effects. So, when ancient humans inhaled certain smoke, the brain did not treat it as completely meaningless. Something shifted in mood, hunger, memory, pain, fear, or the feeling of connection. The first smokers may not have been rebels, priests, or patients, but confused people around a fire. They may have looked at each other through the smoke and realized the night felt different. Then someone remembered the plant, found it again, and deliberately placed it closer to the flames. That small decision changed everything, because repeating an accident is how many human traditions begin. But archaeology is difficult, because smoke leaves almost nothing behind for future scientists to find. Stone tools survive for millions of years, but leaves, wooden pipes, and plant bundles disappear quickly. A pouch of herbs can vanish into the soil long before anyone arrives with a brush. That is why the oldest direct evidence is much younger than the behavior may actually be. In Central Asia, at ancient burial sites in the Pamir Mountains, researchers found burned cannabis residues. The evidence dates to about 500 BC, and it appears connected to ritual inhalation, wooden braziers, heated stones, and cannabis, with high psychoactive content, were found near human burials. This was not casual smoke drifting from a cooking fire, it was placed with meaning. People gathered near death, heat, stones, smoke, and plants that changed the mind. For them, smoke may have carried grief, prayer, memory, and contact with the unseen world. The ancient Greek writer Herodotus described Scythian nomads using hemp smoke inside small enclosed tents. He wrote that they heated stones, threw hemp seeds on them, and reacted with intense joy. For a long time, some people assumed his account was exaggerated, strange, or misunderstood. Then, archaeologists found Scythian burial mounds containing braziers, heated stones, and hemp residues. The old story suddenly looked less like fantasy and more like careful eyewitness reporting. But cannabis was only one part of the larger story, because tobacco followed a different path. Tobacco is native to the Americas, which means ancient Europeans, Africans, and Asians did not know it. Before 1492, tobacco belonged to the worlds of indigenous peoples across North and South America. When Europeans reached the Caribbean, they saw people inhaling smoke from burning dried leaves. To them, it looked strange, powerful, and confusing. But they quickly became fascinated by it. Yet, tobacco use in the Americas was already ancient long before Columbus ever arrived. Chemical traces in old pipes show tobacco use at least thousands of years before European contact. Even older evidence comes from a 12,000-year-old hearth in the Great Salt Lake Desert. Researchers found seeds of wild tobacco concentrated inside an ancient fire used by early Americans. Those seeds suggest people may have placed tobacco into the fire deliberately, though the purpose remains debated. Maybe they inhaled the smoke, maybe it was ritual, or maybe it belonged to healing practices. Whatever the reason, it shows that humans were interacting with tobacco incredibly early. 12,000 years ago, people had no cities, no pottery in that region, and no written religion. But they already understood that certain plants had special power when placed near fire. This matters because it suggests smoking did not begin as a modern vice or fashionable habit. It began inside survival worlds, where plants, spirits, medicine, fear, and community were deeply connected. In many indigenous cultures, tobacco was not treated as something casual or mindless. It was sacred, used for prayer, healing, agreements, respect, and communication with unseen forces. Smoke was imagined as a messenger rising upward with words, wishes, gratitude, and sorrow. A shaman smoking was not taking a break. he was entering a serious spiritual act. That is very different from the modern image of someone smoking out of boredom. For thousands of years, smoke often belonged to ritual discipline, not careless everyday consumption. This is one of the biggest twists in the entire history of smoking. What later became a destructive commercial habit may have begun as ceremony, medicine, and social glue. Ancient humans were not simply chasing pleasure, they were trying to survive fear, sickness, and grief. In a world without hospitals, inhaling heated herbs may have seemed like a reasonable treatment. Ancient Egyptian medical texts describe smoke and herbal vapors used for problems of the throat and lungs. From a modern perspective, treating breathing problems with smoke sounds dangerous and deeply strange. But ancient healers were thinking through direct delivery. The lungs could receive medicine quickly. Some herbs did contain active compounds, and some vapors may have produced real short-term relief. Ancient Indian medicine also described smoke inhalation through prepared herbs and controlled practices. Greek physicians wrote about fumigation and herbal vapors for certain conditions affecting the body. Across early civilizations, people repeatedly discovered that heated plants could affect pain, breathing, mood, and ritual. They did not understand modern pharmacology, but they observed enough effects to keep using them. Sometimes they were right, sometimes they were wrong, and sometimes the treatment probably harmed people. That is the reality of ancient medicine. Brilliant observation mixed with dangerous misunderstanding. But smoke was never only medicine. It was also a way to bind people together. Humans survived because groups stayed close, trusted one another, and acted together under pressure. A person alone in prehistoric darkness was vulnerable, but a coordinated group could endure almost anything. Shared rituals helped create that coordination by making people feel connected to something larger than themselves. When a group breathed the same smoke, sang the same sounds, and watched the same flames, they were not simply relaxing. They were strengthening identity, memory, trust, and emotional unity. Smoke circles may have worked as social technology, long before anyone built temples or cities. Around the fire, people learned who belonged, who mourned, who healed, and who led. The smoke made invisible things visible: breath, prayer, fear, pain, and the presence of others. That may be why smoke appears again and again in rituals across human history. It rises, disappears, transforms, and seems to move between the human world and the unknown. For ancient minds, that must have felt powerful, almost impossible to ignore. Then came the disaster of modern commercialization, when sacred smoke was turned into a global product. After tobacco reached Europe, it spread with shocking speed through ports, markets, courts, and streets. What had been controlled in many indigenous traditions became increasingly casual, fashionable, and profitable. By the 19th century, cigars and tobacco products were everywhere across many parts of the world. By the 20th century, industrial cigarettes made nicotine cheaper, faster, stronger, and easier to consume. Companies learned how to package addiction, advertise it, and hide its dangers for as long as possible. They turned an ancient plant relationship into one of the deadliest consumer industries in history. This is why we must separate ancient smoke rituals from modern commercial smoking very carefully. A healer placing herbs on hot stones is not the same as a corporation selling addiction. Both involve smoke, but their meaning, purpose, and moral weight are completely different. So, when did ancient humans first start smoking, or intentionally inhaling smoke from burning plants? The honest answer is that nobody knows the exact first moment, and probably nobody ever will. The physical evidence reaches back thousands of years, but the behavior may be far older. It may go back to the first long nights when humans gathered around controlled fire. Maybe one person noticed a strange plant made fear softer during a storm. Maybe one healer remembered that certain smoke seemed to loosen a painful chest. Maybe one grieving group discovered that rising smoke gave shape to invisible sorrow. And maybe, over generations, those memories became rituals that no one questioned anymore. That is how human culture often begins, not with a plan, but with repeated meaning. The deeper truth is that smoking did not begin as cigarettes, brands, or modern addiction. It began with fire, breath, plants, pain, curiosity, and the human need to feel transformed. Ancient people were not primitive fools staring blankly into flames without understanding anything. They were observers, experimenters, healers, storytellers, and survivors working with the world they had. They noticed patterns in smoke, plants, dreams, bodies, and the emotions of the group. They learned through danger, mistake, memory, and the terrible cost of getting things wrong. Some knowledge healed them, some deceived them, and some became sacred for thousands of years. That is the strange beauty of this story. Smoke was both poison and symbol. It could hurt the lungs, calm the mind, carry prayers, hide danger, or gather people together. It was never only one thing, because humans never used it for only one reason. The next time you smell wood smoke on a cold night, think about that long chain. Think about the first people crouched beside flames while animals moved beyond the light. Think about a hand reaching toward a plant, not fully knowing what would happen next. Think about the courage and danger inside every ancient experiment with the natural world. Those people had no books, no chemistry, and no safe instructions waiting beside the fire. But they had attention, memory, imagination, and the ability to ask one dangerous question. What happens if we do this again, but this time on purpose? That question helped create medicine, ritual, community, and eventually some of humanity's most complicated habits. Modern smoking is harmful, but the ancient story behind smoke is deeper than addiction. It is a story about how humans turned accident into meaning and meaning into tradition. Fire gave us warmth, food, protection, and a place to gather in the dark. Smoke gave us mystery, warning, medicine, ritual, and sometimes a dangerous illusion of comfort. And through it all, one thread remained, unbroken from the oldest camps to today. A human stands near fire, breathes the changing air, and wonders what it means.